for educational purposes. We're not creating a client-therapist relationship during these talks. The web series and any services associated with the series, including but not exclusive to open office hours, social media posts, and any other form of communication, are for educational purposes only. If you need immediate support or are in crisis, please text 741-741 for the crisis text line, or call Crisis Connections at 866-4-CRISIS at any time. Please know that this is a safe space and you can be real, but we do ask that everyone be respectful and kind to each other. Hi, my name is Sherry Gazette, and I'm the facilitator tonight for the Balance in Mind Parent Series Parent Chat. I'm a Balance in Mind member, and I'm also the founder of TeenWise and a teen and parent coach. Tonight we have several of us who are doing this together, who are all on the Balance in Mind task force. We have Allison McElroy, Allison, I probably said that totally wrong. Valerie Horvath is going to be helping behind the scenes as well. And then we have Mina, who is joining us from the Youth Eastside Services. Let me go ahead and introduce Mina. 1 second here. Got off of this too soon. So Mina is a YES counselor at Rose Hill Middle School. She has previously worked at the International Community School, the Redmond Middle School, and Inglewood Middle School. She loves helping children build their resilience and master their goals. She is also a parent of 2 kids in elementary schools in the Lake Washington School District. So welcome, Mina. We'll have you pop on here.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Nice to be here.
And so we are going to, just a note to the audience, tonight we're going to be doing Q&A a little bit differently if you joined us before. If you hover around the bottom of your screen, there's something that says Q&A. If you're on an iPad or a Mac device, I believe it's somewhere else, maybe at the top. So we're going to be taking questions that way, but we highly encourage you to be chatting during this in the chat box. Again, hover near the bottom and it says chat, and you can see what everybody's comments are. Usually it shows up on the right side of your screen there. And so we have Allison and Valerie who will be monitoring the questions as they come in, and we'll pop in and let you answer those when possible. There is also a raise your hand button near the bottom. It's not showing up on mine because I'm a panelist here. But if you raise your hand, we can actually see that you want to ask a question. And when we have a chance, we can ask you to come on, and you'll show up on the video on screen and be able to ask your question live. So let's get started, Mina. You have a wonderful meditation for us, so why don't we start there?
Sounds good, yeah. So we've been practicing, starting with a bit of a kind of a space and grace moment where we try to focus and settle so we're in the best place to learn and to absorb new information. So with that, I would like to invite you to join me for a brief meditation, and you can lower your gaze or just soften your gaze and just feel the weight of your body in the chair and the chair supporting you. Feel your feet on the floor and the points of contact your body has with the floor. And you can start focusing on your breathing and notice breathing in and breathing out. And there's no need to try to change anything. Just focus on the breathing as it is and follow it with your attention, breathing in and breathing out. And you may want to start to let go of the hassles of the day a little bit. And at this point, you may want to imagine your mind as if it's a surface of a pond or a lake, and all the thoughts and emotions and things that happened are those ripples in a pond. And all you can do is observe them radiate out. You can't chase them, you can't change them. All you can do is just observe how they ripple out and the water becomes calm afterwards. So letting this feeling sink in while still focusing on the breath, breathing in and breathing out. And at this point, I would like you to reflect why you're here tonight. What is your motivation for being here? What brings you here this evening? And just notice what comes up for you. Again, there's no need to judge something as positive or negative or try to change anything. Just be aware of what comes up. Okay. So as you get to a close for this meditation, you may want to start noticing the sounds in the room again, noticing body sensations again. Maybe start to make small movements. And then when you're ready, you're welcome to join us back in the session. Thank you. So Sherry, with that, we conclude the meditation part.
Okay, welcome back everybody to reality. That was so great, Mina, to ground us and have us to stop and get in the right space to take in information and be open to each other. So tonight we're talking about motivation, and there's a lot to this, and most of us have kids who've just restarted school, the online learning experience. And one of the big things I'm hearing from parents is, oh my gosh, how do I motivate them to actually do their work? So we're going to talk about what is motivation, where does it come from, and how do we get more of it? So let's dive in, Mina. Where would you like to start?
Yeah, so these are all important questions. And yeah, given the situation we are all in right now, we may have noticed that we ourselves sometimes struggle with our motivation and productivity. Working from home can be difficult, and just adjusting to the whole situation can be hard. So sometimes when we try to wrap our heads around something, it might be good to consider what is its opposite. So with that, I would like to kind of right off the start invite the audience to participate and answer the question, when you think, what do you think is the opposite of motivation? What comes to your mind when you think of what the opposite is? And you can use the chat feature to So I say demand is one idea. So it could be negativity, of course. Yep. There's coercion, control, manipulation.
Laziness, a couple people said in a row.
Yeah, lethargy, that could be, yeah. So it's kind of what's the opposite of, yeah, I see what you mean there. Here is a good one too. So procrastination, yeah. So those are, if you focus on the child, you may see them as either motivated or lazy or lethargic or procrastinating. But if you focus as how we inspire motivation in somebody else, so the opposite in that regard could be like demanding compliance or giving commands or giving no choice, working on autopilot. So there is a bit of a difference if you notice. How do you, where do you anchor the motivation? Does it come from the person, or is it something that's, is it intrinsic in them, or do we help support it in somebody else? So if we want to understand how to motivate somebody else, we want to figure out how do we stay away from demanding and how to stay away from manipulating and giving commands and desiring compliance at all costs, and move in more to the place of where we help people understand and connect to their own values and goals, because this is where true motivation lies, in when people are motivated from the inside out. This is the intrinsic motivation. And we do this when they do something which is important to them, that they're involved in that, or some part of what they have to do connects to what they really truly find important in their life. Sometimes when they're struggling with motivation, we also need to acknowledge the ambivalence. So a person can be of two minds, like they need something is very important, and at the same time have fear how they will accomplish that, and therefore they aren't sure. So by helping them stay in that ambivalence, we stay away from creating resistance. Because the minute we start saying you should be doing this and giving advice, and the minute they can start going the other direction. So staying in the ambivalence is how we help them figure it out for themselves based on their own values. And then if you want to help them motivate them, we can strategically reflect back to them the parts of the argument you want to give air to. So which are the parts you want to support from what they're saying to us. And here there's a slight difference between motivation and manipulation. So if you think of manipulation, you guide them towards your own goals and what is important to you. But if you think of motivation in a strategic way, we guide them to accomplish their own goals the way they see them.
Right.
And yeah.
So you touched a little bit on the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So let me share a slide really quick so we can dive into that a little bit more, because I think that's something that it really sticks with them for a lifetime if they are able to create this desire of their own to succeed and get their stuff done versus us just, you have to do it, which is the extrinsic, right? So let me share this screen, and I know that you haven't seen this yet, but it'll be obvious to you once we show it here. So here we go. Can you see that, Mina?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
So here we have, like, on the left side, we have the personal values, which are purpose, growth, curiosity, passion, self-expression, and fun, is what drives somebody from the inside. And then on the extrinsic side, there's just the environment, what comes from the environment, right? Which is promotions, pay raises, bonuses, benefits. And there's I think, to say that one is wrong or one is better than the other, it's good for both to work in concert, because we do respond to rewards. We always have, always will. We are wired to respond to rewards, and we do it with our kids. Whether it's a token economy for them to accomplish their chores, and they get like stickers and charts and everything. So those do work, and that's why they're being used. But if we rely only on that, then we're missing a key point of personal growth and being able to motivate oneself in the long run. Because the extrinsic usually kind of works in the short run and it's kind of more dependent on the environment as well.
Right, exactly. And one thing I think we have to be careful of is if it all becomes on the extrinsic side, then if they're not getting a reward, they're like, why am I doing this? And I saw that with my own kids. I don't remember what it was I was giving them a reward for, but when I stopped, they're like, well, why should I do it? What are you going to give me? And I'm like, well, nothing. I'm asking you to do it. Yeah. So we kind of get into that trap.
And at some point, they even stop caring. They don't care about the reward anymore. So I think this is also something to keep in mind as children grow up and develop. So when they're younger, they're usually more kind of steeped into the family values, the family fabric. With younger kids, it seems to be more appropriate to be using those kind of behavior modifications where we have, charts and we do the rewards. As kids grow older and become more independent, it is a developmental stage for them to become more individuated and more their own person. And this is when they start to develop more of their own interests and values and goals. And this is where we want to support those in a healthy way, of course. And then this is where it's important to start to focus more on that as opposed to what they're getting out of it, like that's outside of them. And then the other thing to consider when we talk about extrinsic versus intrinsic is how much they feel that they can. This also goes into how much they feel like they can control the environment. If how much choice is there available to them, and whether they have influence over what happens in their life. So the more constrained they feel as they grow up, the more it's possible to see resistance and rebellion and just miscommunication, so difficulties in that area.
Right, and you make a good point, because let's say our kids are kind of motivated, have the intrinsic motivation, but we're still piling on this extrinsic. When they get to the space where they need to individuate, they may decide to push back and not do schoolwork just because they're pushing back against you and all this extrinsic motivation.
Yeah, that's a very important point to understand between resistance and ambivalence. So resistance usually happens, it happens between two people. And you can think of it as if you have like those elastic bands. So if one person holds the elastic band, it's just loose and loopy and there's no tension, but if the other person grabs, there's tension all of a sudden there. So if you can stay away from the resistance and creating more tension, and if you can focus on their own internal struggle, what's going on for them inside, like what may be their fear that somebody pointed out earlier, what may be their insecurity or uncertainty, or what may be stopping them from something, but they still want to work on it, then we can, first of all, show them that we understand them, we have empathy, they feel understood, they feel more connected, engaged, and they're more likely to listen to us when then we reflect back to them, well, I hear that this is how you're feeling, I also see this is where you want to go, how can you get there? So they can be more open to us when we engage in that way.
Right. A good question here from Regina. How do threats of punishment impact motivation? And this is so true because we have intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, right? So that may be the prizes, the bonuses. But then sometimes as parents, we get to the point where we have to put consequences in place, right? So how does that fit into all this?
So there is a place for threats and punishment, I would assume, depending on the behavior. So I would probably, like punishment might sound a bit harsh, but maybe just some kind negative, like stopping not reinforcing the negative behavior, for example, finding ways to go in that way. So I would say, depending on if it's a matter of safety, there probably will be no time to talk about values and goals and ambivalence, all those things. So you want to really make sure people are safe in the moment. So that then you want compliance, even if you have to issue like a warning or a threat. You want people
immediately.
Immediately, right? And sometimes, yeah, that probably would be one way you want to use that. But it does mean that then they motivated, they comply, they don't really do it because they feel like this is good for them, but they just want to comply with with the authority.
Right. And there are, I would say, if we're going to use consequences, especially if we're talking about this online schooling piece, right, that it's very clear ahead of time, instead of trying to come up with a consequence in the moment, so that it's very clear, if you don't get this work done by Friday or whenever, here's the consequence. They know it ahead of time, so they're making a choice.
That's another really good point. And it's also good if we can use natural consequences. For example, if they didn't do the work on time, they won't have maybe so much time to do their other favorite things like screen time or whatever they like to do. So it's kind of really, it happens. It's not like if they don't do the work, then there is of course less time to do the other fun stuff. But yeah, knowing ahead of time what's coming so they aren't caught off guard, maybe developing like the consequence with them, in collaboration with them. Say, if you don't do this work, what do you think it's a fair consequence if the work doesn't get done? And then they have more say and they have more of a stake into it as well.
Right, for sure. They can't argue with the consequence because they created it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of allows you to be the good cop instead of the bad cop, because you're like, oh, well, you said that this is the consequence. And I think in this situation, one of the natural consequences is they don't get their work done by Friday, and then the teacher knows it, and stuff piles on the next week. It's interesting. We still are kind of in limbo of what's going to happen with the grades. So in normal school time, if they don't get it done, they get an F or they fail the class. I think they said no Fs are coming out. So I don't know if that is true, but it'll be interesting on that front to see what goes on.
Yeah, I think seems like everybody's understanding of the situation we're all in, and then it can be difficult on families and kids and parents and everybody involved. So I think that's where it comes from, the idea that like grading probably won't be reflecting of the true what's happening for each kid. So
yeah, which in my opinion, I think that they just have to do that because there's so many different situations going on. Nobody knows what's going on at home, and whether it's accessibility or it's hard for a kid to focus that long, whatever it may be. I think the school district is taking that into account. I know some parents are really frustrated, but they've been thinking about this long and hard, as we know. So we got to put some trust in the district on this. Okay, so another thing, Mina, you mentioned was the locus of control. So I did create a slide for you. So let me bring that up so we can talk about that a little bit. Control is something right now that is causing a lot of issues because we as parents used to have some control over stuff. Coronavirus came, we lost control. So imagine how our teens and tweens and younger kids are feeling throughout the situation. So let me bring up this slide so we can talk about it. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, we can see that, when you make things happen, like you feel more control of your destiny, and then you feel like there's kind of a feeling of self-efficacy. You can, whatever you need to do, you can make it happen for yourself. But then when things happen to you, there is uncertainty, there's fear, there is confusion. And then of course, the why bother, which is like the lack of motivation, like why why even try? Because nothing really depends on you. So yeah, I had the same thoughts as I was preparing for tonight, that we do kind of experience this lack of control at the moment where we are constrained to the extent we have never been before in our lifetimes, for sure. So we do feel, for example, how might a grounded teen feel when they're stuck in the house?
Right.
Yeah, so we can have empathy on that level, that if you feel that if you feel like everybody's against you, nobody listens, nobody understands, of course you may want to stop trying at some point. So it's important, this is where it's important to notice what's happening, to try to engage with the teen or with the kid, see where they're at, what's going on for them, how do they see things from their perspective, and then this is where it's interesting, reflect back to them that you see that happening, even if you don't agree. So even if you see that they're doing something wrong, we have this, what is called the Righting Reflex. When we see something wrong, we tend to want to say something about it, tend to want to make it right, and this is where they tend to push back immediately. So showing them, I hear what you're saying, I mean, this is not, might not agree with you, but from your viewpoint, from your worldview, this is how things are, and I can see that. Shows that you, even if there is this lack of control, at least somebody understands.
Right. And again, like, reflecting it back to them or even validating doesn't mean that you're saying it is correct. You have every right to be this mad or this sad or whatever. I mean, their feelings are their feelings.
Yeah.
And just them knowing that you see that in them goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then they feel like you're a team, not that you're against them.
Yeah. And then you can use, usually it's good word to use is the word and. So you can, because you don't then, if you use the word but, you kind of negate everything that happens said for that. So if you say, I see how you're feeling, and how do you think you may want to do it next time? Like, what do you think, how do you want to do it next time? Because right now you're really having a hard time.
Right.
And then to go back to the locus of control, I think when we feel so out of control, it's really important to focus on things and really be mindful of what is still under our control. That usually is how we react or how we take care of ourselves, how we model for our kids, self-care and maybe self-compassion, and how do we show them that there's still some things we can control, even if the world around us seems to be this new scary place.
Right. Because honestly, if the kids feel like they're on that other side of where it's all out of their control, that's when they start to push back and get angry with you, even though you're not the one who's, dealing with all of this. But, it all comes out for some kids as very negative emotions. And if we can get in there and like be part of their team, then we can start to feel the underlying emotions of they're sad and they feel like they can't see their friends and all of those other emotions other than the harsh, like the anger and frustration. So I think that's important. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. So sometimes we have to put consequences in place when the schoolwork isn't, I shouldn't say we have to, sometimes we choose to. And so if we do that and then our kids get mad about it, how do we handle it at that point?
So I think this is where it's important to discuss with them the consequences beforehand, where they're part of that. And maybe this is where we kind of try to engage them more and work with them to make sure that we are on the same page as to why what they're doing is important. And if they're an older kid, we may want to go back to what's important to you. Like, I noticed that you really are becoming more of an independent person. You want to be more kind of your own person. This is important to you. And then if you really want to develop that further, you for sure would like to be independent from us at one point. And what's one way to get there? Get good grades, go in a good school, and just work on self-sufficiency in some way, shape, or form. So just focus on what's important to them. So if they get mad, you can reflect that to them, say, I hear you're very mad about that. Let's talk about it. When is a good time to talk about that? What's going on for you? What's underneath there? How do you work with it and figure out where is it coming from? Just work with that.
And at the very beginning of that, you put them in control. When do you want to talk about it? Instead of let's talk about it right now. You're saying when you're ready, let's talk about it, and I can help you out.
That's a great way to develop, engage somebody, develop a quick rapport, because you show respect for them and then you give them control too. And then sometimes it's good to ask permission, like not always, like all those things that aren't useful all the time. So it depends on the personal judgment and the personal situation. But sometimes it's good to ask, hey, is it okay with you if we talk about this now? So ask for permission. That what do you think about that? That could be something too.
Yeah, and as parents, we don't always need to kind of give them control over everything. But if we're asking them to open up, we have to give them control over that. We can't force them to talk to us about their feelings. They have to feel a little in control of that.
Yeah.
Okay, one thing I would add to that also is if they are getting really angry and frustrated with the consequences, is remember they're completely in their emotional brain at that point. So logic is out the window. So acknowledge their feelings, and that needs to be at that point. You after they calm down, then you can talk about it. And sometimes you can say, I can see you're very angry. And so for now, we're just gonna stop here and we can talk about this in a little bit when you're ready.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, so I see a few questions have come in here. Allison and Valerie, I'm going to defer to you here. If you can unmute yourselves and let us know what questions Mina needs to answer.
Sure. I have a great question that has come in, which is all about motivation. Is it true that motivation is difficult when kids just say that it doesn't matter for the grades, which may be the case for the rest of this year? What do you guys say?
So whether it's true that it's difficult to motivate if the grades don't matter?
Yeah, since the grading system's kind of off.
Well, if that's the only source of motivation and that source it doesn't work, I mean, it's not there anymore, then probably it will be hard for them to be motivated, right? So this is where we want to develop this is where we want to go into values and goals, because then that doesn't depend on the grade in the end. So it's not result oriented, but it's more internally oriented as to what is important to that kid. And this probably will depend on the kid's age too a little bit, because the older they are, the more they understand that what they do actually matters in the real world. The younger they are, the more they lack that understanding and perspective taking that older kids can do. So trying to work with them and then see what else is important besides grades. Why else would that class be useful for them? And I know Michelle said this in the previous chat, but if the grade isn't as important, and maybe if the kid doesn't have no interest in the class, maybe they can do something which is they're interested in. So now there's lots of opportunities online to find whether it's educational videos or websites or something which they're curious and interested on their own, and work on developing their own curiosity and motivation to work on that area. And that provided that the grades, they can do without being the best in that class. If that's important to them, maybe work as to how, if it's so important, then they don't want to put in the work. And this is where we can sometimes, we want to develop a discrepancy. Is another way to increase motivation is if you go to the value, if you say this is important to you, but then you don't put in the work, how do you square those two things?
Right. And I think we have a unique opportunity right now to re-engage our kids in this love of learning, because as they get older, it does become more about the grades. So now we can say, you know what, you're right, the grades don't really matter right now. What matters is you're enjoying it and having fun learning. So what in your classes, what are you getting excited about? Don't worry about the grades and the homework, worry about the content and what gets you excited. And it's really exciting to me that we have this opportunity to go against all of the grading system and just be like, this is about learning again. That's what we need to focus on. So maybe one of the first things, according to what you've brought up so far, Mina, is to sit down with our kids with a sheet of values, and you can go online and find that, tons of values, or they can just come up with their own and say, okay, let's figure out as a family, what are our family values and what are our individual values, and kind of have those hang on the fridge or something, and you can point back to those when they're not wanting to engage. Say, I wonder why isn't this in alignment with your values?
Yeah, that could be one way to do it. Yeah, and yeah, there are definitely a lot of materials online that can help with figuring out individual values are, or family values.
Right. Okay, so let's go back. We have a couple more questions, I think. So either Valerie or Allison can come up and ask that question for us.
Sure.
So,
go ahead,
Go
Val.
ahead, Allison.
So there's a question about that kids have access to other screen time functions on their school laptops. And it's asking how we motivate them to keep focused on their schoolwork when parents aren't looking. That's a tough one.
It's a tough one, I agree. And I did hear that they had disabled the chat function, but it sounds like probably they didn't because kids were using it for other purposes. They were. So yeah, I think it probably will depend on the work accomplished in the end and the consequences we have in place for that. So if they're able to accomplish their work and they have, you know, according to their own standard, then even if they use the chat feature, okay, they did it. So yeah, I think if they manage to do what they said they will do, or what they need to do and they agree to doing, I think it's how we can work with that. And maybe then it might be good to, if they're, because kids are craving social time right now, like they really are stuck at home, they don't see their classmates and friends at school. So maybe having those kind of play dates by Zoom where they get to just interact with others and have those kind of maybe spaced throughout the day, and it will depend how each family can do it for themselves, because parents also try to work from home, so it might not be possible for everyone, but intentionally setting aside time for socializing might help with that too, because then they won't have the need so much when they have to do their work.
Right. And one thing to keep in mind is when our kids were actually in school, we weren't there monitoring every moment of the day how much they were focusing. Neither were the teachers. You know, there were times in the day where they had to focus, whether they're writing in-class essay or the teacher is lecturing. And now it's a little bit up in the air. So like Mina said, if they get their stuff done, it doesn't really matter if they've been chatting throughout the day. That may be what motivates them to keep going. So we just have to look at, are they getting the fundamental stuff done, and kind of let some of that control go. What I do see right now is because we're in this weird time where we don't have the normal control we do, that we as parents are trying to kind of get control of whatever we can. And we also feel a pressure to control this online learning. And some of it is going to add more tension, like you were talking about the rubber band. Every time we step in and pull back, that creates this tension, which creates all these emotions that go around it. So we have to be aware of when to step in and when to kind of just let it roll.
Exactly.
Okay, let's see. I think we have a couple of people who put their questions over in the chat box too. Let's see, I saw one down here.
I've got a couple ones.
Great.
That are somewhat similar. It's about schoolwork versus other things. So I'm going to read both questions. Is it healthy to set a work hard, play hard mentality? For example, we must finish our learning goals for the week before we have any fun or special activities on the weekend. Okay. The other one is, in our house, socializing with friends is a priority over doing homework or schoolwork, sorry. She can text and talk to her friend anytime during the day. If I don't allow this and she becomes very lonely and unmotivated, she may not do her schoolwork, or she may not be unmotivated.
Yeah, so with the first one, I think it does depend on the family itself. So if that's a value for the family and that's important to them, they may want to just naturally bring up their kids in that environment where people work hard and they play hard, and that's totally fine. That's what the family is important to them, and that's how they do it. It will depend if the teen or the kid is in alignment with those values, and if they are, great. If there is some tension there, it needs to be explored. Otherwise, it probably will create resistance and lack of communication. So, of course, in itself, there's nothing wrong with that. Just depends on how well it aligns with the teens' own values for themselves, and that's something that's important to them too.
Can I add something to that, Mina? I think that And this play hard, I'm going to take that as play hard, like meaning doing something big. But I think it is important to have those moments throughout the week that are downtime and moments of joy. So it may not be that you get to go to the movies with your friends or spend 3 hours with them, but it might be that you have, you know, a FaceTime call with them, or that you get to do art, something that is not so focused, because our kids, no matter what age, they need to have that downtime, because that's when their brain, it's like their brain takes a deep breath and is ready for the next challenge. So I think it is important to have those throughout the week. But maybe, yeah, the big stuff is on the weekend.
Yeah, I agree that, like, if it's only work and no play for the entire week, it will be really difficult. And those kind of nourishing, replenishing activities are important, as you said. I do agree with that. Mm-hmm.
And then the second piece was about that she allows her daughter, or I assume daughter, to like kind of have, you know, socialized time whenever.
Yeah, so for this one, so if she becomes, sounds like, I'm not exactly clear how much work the kid is doing and if they're doing the work they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
If they're socializing but they're still completing their work, I would say that's totally fine. If it sounds like all they want to do is socialize and just that's kind of all they want to focus on, maybe it's good to explore, depending on the child's age, like what else is important to them? Like how do they see this playing out into the future? Like how do they see themselves maybe in a year or 2 years, and how do they want to get there? So it's kind of a deeper conversation to be had, which, given the current situation, I don't know exactly if it will be the right place, because right now some kids are stuck in a survival mode where they just kind of need to make it throughout the day and not have a tantrum or not really fall apart.
So
yeah.
Can I add in a question here, which is, in some ways, this sounds like a family values versus a school values question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our family values our kids to learn. It may not be in the same way that the school values them to learn. And given that everything is going AWOL right now, how do we reconcile those things?
Well, I think that the school seems to be trying to meet the parents some part of the way by maybe not, having grades, not insisting so much on that part, on that piece. So they are giving a bit more control to the parents as to how do they want to shape the online learning education that the kids are doing. But yeah, it's as with anything, it's a matter of negotiation. And I think if the kids see the value of learning on its own, and that's what is important in the family, I think that's a great gift for them to have with them throughout their life. And then the focus on the results and the grades and the achievements and accomplishments comes from the school environment, which currently isn't as prominent as it was like maybe it's the regular school year. So in general, I think it's good to have those conversations, and the kid can be aware that there can be difference in values, and then how do they want to navigate that? If it's important, then they may want to have to do the extra work to get to the achievement they need to get to, even if it's not the most important subject to them personally. So it's another way of actually instilling, I think, self-efficacy and knowing that not all in life is fun. Sometimes you do have to do those difficult things that we are kind of a stepping stone to something else. And it's also a lesson in itself, I believe, too.
And I think for this particular parent is talking about that she notices that she becomes unmotivated. And so I love that you're really reading the emotions of your child, saying, okay, this is what she needs. And it sounds like you're really in tune with that. So I love that. There's another question here that I'm going to answer because I was just dealing with this with a client the other day. So I think it's a good one. Any suggestions on keeping younger siblings away from a child who's doing schoolwork? And this is also an issue for parents who are at home doing work, right? So the thing I would highly recommend is that you have signs for your family, that so that it's kind of like you know, the do not enter sign that teens have on their doors sometimes. You know, have that for yourself as a parent and for your kids, the different age levels, that says, you know, Zoom conference in progress, or I need silence right now, so that for the little kids, they have that visual, because otherwise they don't know. They just see you at the computer all the time. They don't know when they can approach you or not.
Yeah, and I think reminding them often, because sometimes, like my kids, they would know, like they hear me, but they still come in anyway.
Right.
Reminding them every day that that's how it works, and finding something to occupy the little one, and finding things for them to do, like whether it's a puzzle or a book or something for them to do, so they themselves are engaged.
Right. And the other thing I notice that some people do is they have a visual timer, or Alexa or somebody, to say, okay, after this goes off, then you can come and check in with me. But before that, I'm going to be on a call, or I'm going to be doing this. So, and same for the siblings, that they can set their own timers and stuff. For the little ones to have that visual can be helpful, because we can tell the little ones 10 minutes or I'm busy, but when we say I'm busy, we're not giving that time frame. So, and they're not going to leave you alone all day. I can guarantee that. Okay, so let's see what else. Teresa says family values versus school values were there before this new norm. Yes, and that is so true. Like we had to kind of not fight the system, but we had to fight kind of the pressures that everyone was feeling. So now, especially, we continue to fight this situation, because we see online your kid has to have a schedule, they need to work from this time to this time and do this, and we all get to make the rules kind of on this. And that comes back to what Mina said, our values. Let's figure out what those are, have a family meeting and discuss it and come up with a plan. Okay, so Mina, you have lots of stuff that we can still talk about. We've got, you know, a bit more time. So we talked about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, locus of control. I know that you had some tips for what you called motivational interviewing. I love this. Should we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, this is actually very interestingly, I'm doing a online training this whole week on motivation interviewing myself, which I've been doing like for the past 3 days, like for 2 hours every day. So yeah, some tips from that. That's a evidence-based practice, which is I think developed originally with substance use clients, but has since built into all different areas because it's so highly effective. And kind of the basics of that, of the 4 pretty much motivational interviewing principles are, and we've already touched upon some of them, are expressing empathy, and that's done to engage motivation, to engage the person and to increase the motivation. Developing discrepancy is when we focus back on values and goals and how what they're doing is or isn't working, and then staying in that ambivalence space. And then rolling with resistance. For example, if the kid or the teen, they talk about how what they're doing is working for them, they don't want to change. The useful thing to do at that point is to stop what we are saying, to drop our end of the argument, so they don't have nothing to resist, and then to try to figure out where they're coming from. Just engage them in levels to discuss more what's happening for them, how do they see it, what is important to them in that scenario. And then the last way is to support self-efficacy. For example, even if we notice that our kid is having a hard time, just by staying positive and trusting that they can find their own way, even if they may feel a bit lost in the moment, just having that operating from a space of trust and support rather than a space of fear and deficiency. Because if you go to the fear and deficiency side, we tend to want to control things. We are afraid of where they might end up, and we tend to want to control that they don't get to the dark, difficult place. But they resist us even more throughout the way. So we want to stay on the side of, yes, they're having a hard time and they can work through it, and we believe that they can do it. And that's supporting their self-efficacy, which is also kind of one of the pillars of having self-motivation rather than something imposed from the outside.
Right. Okay. We have someone who would like to come on and ask a question live. Are you up for that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I apologize, May. I'm going to pull you up just so there's no surprises so you can ask your question. Okay, and I'm trying to unmute you here. Okay, for some reason I can't unmute you from my end. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hello?
There we go. Hi, I can hear you. Go for it.
I'm actually listening to the talk. I left my phone on the counter. I didn't know why it signaled.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but actually, I actually appreciate this opportunity. I am like exactly like what you guys are saying. I'm working at home and trying to make my kids 5 years old kindergarten to do the homework, but you know he doesn't want to do it. And if I try to be soft, like, what do you want to do? I mean, all the time, all he wanted to do is just watch TV, you know, play with the computer. And especially remote learning gave them so many opportunities to access the computer. He actually become like obsessed with the computer things, everything on the computer. He just wanted to use computer.
Right. Mina, what do you have to say to that?
That can be difficult. So sound like you have one kid in the family and he's a 5-year-old kindergartner. And then if you work yourself from home, that can be hard to be engaged with him all the time. But trying to coordinate with him to unplug sounds like might be really useful. So I'm not sure if you have access to, you know, backyard or outdoors and just have something for him to do out there, like find something like a bucket or some kind of sticks for him to kind of poke around in the garden. And then there's probably like learning about, like, it's spring right now, so leaves are popping up and flowers are blooming. So just kind of trying to relate what you see outside to some kind of an learning opportunity. So for example, trying to engage them not just in having fun, but also learning as they're having fun. So might be a good way for them to kind of see that learning can also be a fun thing, not something that they have to be doing it even if they don't want to be doing it.
But do you think that means are you recommending, you know, I take him, you know, in outdoor activities?
So this is more if you have access to like a backyard. I'm not sure.
I do, but I kind of don't have time. It's
I
not
know.
the access of place because, as I said, I'm a single mom. I kind of supposed to work from home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part that drives me crazy because I try to work. Honestly, actually, I didn't make much progress on my own work, and I didn't make much progress on my son's work either, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to feel like you really want to make progress right now, but it's also important to keep in mind that it's a difficult situation. Like you are working from home and then also having to provide childcare from home. And then those two things at the same time, it's difficult. So having some kindness towards yourself, some patience, some self-compassion, that it is a hard job. And it's probably kind of is not possible to do those things at the same time. So maybe find some way to do kind of divide and conquer, like have chunks of time where you try to focus on work and chunks of time where you try to focus on your kid. Could be one way. Just kind of rolling with it. Just probably will not be easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not the only one in that boat. I know we have lots of single parents. Someone was speaking up last time about the difficulty, and it does add a whole nother level, especially when you have the young ones. It's very different than monitoring your middle schoolers and high schoolers. So hang in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Val and Allison, I think we have a couple more questions that have come in.
Yeah, we do. Melissa's asking if you have any recommendations, and we talked about this, I think, in the past. Siblings who are annoying the heck out of each other, how can we help them gain some empathy for one another?
Yeah, maybe engage in perspective taking. For example, how does it feel when you're on the receiving end of, you know, being teased, and why do you want to do it then in return? I know the person has tried that, but it can be difficult, and maybe just having some understanding that this could be just kind of the outward expression of how they're feeling inside. So they do have experience lack of control, and this is kind of the way it comes out. Maybe have some understanding around where it's coming from and what does it mean that they're doing that. And possibly also find separate activities for them if possible at all. So they kind of focus on their own work and have some time apart from each other, which sounds like they were doing before, but now they don't have the same rhythm throughout their day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have another question we're gonna have answered here, but I want to interrupt and do a quick poll here. Let me see if I can find the right one. We're going to put a poll up to see how stressed you are. It's good for us to kind of know, like get a gauge of the community and how stressed everybody is. So I hope you can see that. You just click on your answer there. Can you let me know in the chat box, can you see that poll?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Johnny. And I see some people are answering here. So, okay. And while people are answering this, let's go ahead and ask this last question, Allison or Val.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. The last question this week, we found motivation flies out the window because technology is causing so much problems. How can we keep their motivation up when the online resources make things so much harder than they are? It's not the math that is hard, it's using the math resource.
Yeah, I think here, probably keeping in mind that it's the same for everyone and everybody's having a hard time because it's a new way of teaching that really happened so quickly that nobody had time to prepare for it. So just kind of having some understanding as to why the things are the way they are. And just trying to work with whatever it is. It's not going to be easy, but I think also trusting that everybody is doing the best they can, including teachers and parents and kids. And at this point, for some kids, this is how they may experience the online resource. And that's still a work in, I know we're only in the first week and it's still a work in progress, but for some it can be probably difficult to work with, and that may take some time to get used to. So just having patience for oneself and knowing that it's a steep learning curve, and that's okay.
Right. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to share the results here. You should be able to see it on the screen here. So, hey, we're not doing so bad. We do realize there's two twos on there, but it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So no more stress than normal, 6%. You know, as we go up, it gets a little higher. In the middle is about 39%, then goes to 33%, and back down to 6%. So I'm glad that last one isn't super high. I can think of several variables that would make it a 5 for people, being a single parent, having younger kids, having a kid who's school avoidant, doesn't want to do schoolwork. So yeah, so we've got a nice little bell curve going on there. Okay. All right, and then we have one more poll here. Our Balance in Mind is trying to service the community, as you know, by doing parent chats and doing webinars, and we want to know what's working here. So we are wondering, is the current time of 7:30 to 8:30, is this good for us? So yes or no on that one. And if it doesn't work, let us know what a better window time is. So I'm going to launch this poll here so that you can answer that for us. We have a couple more minutes here. So if anybody has any questions, and if anybody wants to raise their hand and come on screen, we are happy to invite you on screen to ask a question live. Let's see. Can all of you see the answers as they're coming in? I think the panelists can, but I'm not sure if everybody else is seeing that or not. It's kind of like this game watching. Okay, so it looks like tonight, like the 7:30 time is working for most people. It's 80% versus 20. Of course, the people who are on here is probably working better for. It's a little biased result, but that's okay. And then other people are saying it's pretty split between mornings, afternoons, evenings between 5 and 6, evenings between 6 and 7, and between 7 and 8. So it does look like 7 and 8 is kind of the best. Our thinking was that your kids are fed and kind of, you know, getting to bed, so hopefully that works. And then also we'd love to hear from you in the chat box before we go. Like, what topics do you want to know about? We are right now doing the online learning series, and we have those kind of fleshed out, but we're going to continue to do parent chats for you. So we want to know, what do you want to talk about? What is coming up for you in the home? Normally we could sit down and brainstorm and have a million different topics to talk about, but so many things have shifted. So it's a little bit difficult for us to come up with the ideas because everybody's having different experiences and different struggles in the home. So if you can let us know. And somebody asked, what's the Facebook page? If you look up Balance in Mind, you should be able to find it. And we are going to be putting all of our previous webinars up on there. We haven't decided about parent chats yet, what we're going to be doing about that, but we'll probably be taking parts of that and putting them out there. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing those results here, and let's end with a couple more questions. We're going to use all this time we've got. So go ahead, Allison and Val.
Okay. Wait. Oh.
I think we have them answered, don't we?
No, we have one last one.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yes, we do. We have a couple. Okay. And I can now see it because I put my reading glasses on. This week, we found motivation flies out the window because technology is causing so much problems, right? It's a bonus, it's not. How can we keep their motivation up when the online resources make things so much harder than they are? It's not the math that is hard, it's using the math resource.
I think we just did that one.
Oh, God forbid. Okay, then I have another one. Why is college still a good goal to strive for?
And I think that David was suggesting that as a topic. So, and that would be a really good topic. Why is college important? And I have an idea for some good guests we can do that actually. Yeah, as a parent chat, but then bring on some people that can make that a pretty interesting discussion. So thanks for that. We'll put that on our list of topics. All right, so
okay.
let me,
sorry,
go ahead.
I will stop replying to chats.
No,
we're all working together. You see our vulnerability here.
Exactly. We are not perfect, and we can't expect our kids to be perfect. All right, so let me close tonight with a quote, and I always kind of have fun trying to find a quote that makes sense for all of us. So for tonight, let me remind everybody. So we have these weekly parent chats, and then we have on Instagram for your tweens and teens, we have started something called Real Talk. It's Tuesdays at 4, and that is a teen host and a YES counselor who they're talking about certain issues. So have your teen go and watch that. If they're saying no way, you watch it, and I bet you they're gonna take in some of it behind your shoulder. And then we have monthly webinars. The next one is about screen time, regulating and empowering. And we're having a representative from Circle, which is a monitoring device. And I'm very excited about this because they were talking about there's a way to like set school time for a device, which means that it doesn't allow them to go off of the screen they're working on. So I want to hear about that one, but we're going to talk about empowering them as well. And then we're going to have someone from Lake Washington talk to us about resources. And we haven't set the time and date for that yet, but we are going to do that. Okay, so here's our quote for the night. The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, and the great teacher inspires. And I thought this was appropriate for tonight, talking about motivation, because we are kind of becoming the teachers here, right? So really we don't have to tell them everything, explain everything. We just need to inspire them. And especially that internal or intrinsic motivation is what we're looking for. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope that you will join us again in the future. Thank you, Mina, so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.